Welcome to Smashterpieces, a casual walk through the history of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate roster. My name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And if you're new here, what we are doing on the show is we are playing one game for every character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate from 1984's Duck Hunt to 2019's Fire Emblem Three Houses, except for today, when we are actually just doing a bonus episode. Because we can. Technically, I guess we could say that this is representing the Assist Trophy Alucard, but let's be real, that's not 100% the reason it's not representing anything. We just wanted to talk about this game. It is the 1997 PlayStation 1 game, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night.
And it definitely does, to some extent, represent Alucard, because, like, his assist trophy in Smash Brothers pulls moves from Symphony of the Night.
Yes, he even moves like Symphony of the Night, I think.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen him. It's not exactly... Unfortunately, you can't really make a specific assist trophy appear to look at his movements.
You can in training mode.
Can you? I didn't know
Yes.
that, actually. Interesting. But I believe he straight up, like, has the same walk cycle and stuff, like, recreated in the 3D model. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And he also shows up to talk about Richter in the Palutena's Guidance, which I think is the best new one, like, for sure.
And like he says, Richter's a little gullible.
Oh boy, is he? That's the whole plot of the game. Richter was gullible.
So, let's address the elephant in the room right away. Because we played the PS4 version with the new dub.
Which is based on the PSP version, which is where the dub came from.
Yes. And it has completely re-recorded dialogue with new lines written. Meaning the iconic, "What is a man" line is not in Symphony of the Night on the PS4.
So everybody pour one out.
But, so you may be thinking, oh, so you know, old localizations, they tend to not be as good as our modern ones. They took a little too many liberties and generally tried to tone things down or sort of westernize things for the market. So you'd be thinking, okay, so the new dialogue is a more faithful translation, right? Well, it isn't. It's not the original at all, because the ending of Rondo of Blood, which obviously we talked about in our Rondo of Blood episode, that actually was a faithful translation in the PS4 version. That is actually what the Japanese version of the scene is about. And that scene is repeated in the beginning of Symphony of the Night in Japanese. It is trimmed down, obviously, because it has much fewer lines of dialogue, but it is pretty much the same scene. But in the new dub for Symphony of the Night, they took the old dub and just rewrote the words themselves to flow a little more naturally. It's like they translated the original English into English. So it is neither the iconic lines that everyone knows, nor a faithful translation of the Japanese, which I find to be the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, it's the new localization still leaves a lot to be desired. Like, not even in the terms of, like, the cutscenes, but when you look at, like, item descriptions and stuff like that, some of this stuff, I don't know how the fuck you people played this game without a guide in 1997.
They had a subscription to PlayStation Power.
Like, that has to be, they have to have bought the Prima guide, because, like, some of the stuff, even with the new localization, is impenetrable, and I would have never been able to understand what the fuck any of it meant without a guide, and that's a new localization. Apparently the old one was a lot worse. Like, for instance, in the game, if you want to actually beat the game, like, get the good ending, you need to get two items. One is the gold ring, and one is the silver ring, and you need to go to the clock room, which I think is a very cool room, but it's also another thing that's very indicative of, boy, you sure needed to own a guide to understand anything about how this room functioned. You have to wear both of the rings in that room, and then the bottom will open, and you'll be able to go fight a boss who is actually not new in this version. That Maria boss was not in the original game. It is It was put into the Sega Saturn version.
Oh, no. I think you're misunderstanding. That boss fight was in the original game. What is new is being able to play as Maria.
No, I was reading that boss fight was new in the Sega Saturn version, and the PSP version's based on the Sega Saturn version.
Was it? Just searching Maria boss fight with no other context probably isn't going to give me very good... It's all Bloodborne.
Is there a Bloodborne boss named Maria? I guess there must be.
Lady Maria, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Lady Maria. I've never gotten that far. I'm bad at Bloodborne.
I don't know, maybe it was new. I don't know. I don't know very much about this game, to be honest.
That boss fight is new in the Sega Saturn version, and the PSP version was based on that, and then blah, 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 blah. And in this game, one of the rings, the description says in, like, something along the lines of, like, in the, and the next one says clock room, or something like that. In the original, they didn't even say that, apparently. In the original, without a guide, from what I could tell, in the original without a guide, it was actually impossible to be able, without like ridiculous trial and error, to be able to tell that that's what you were supposed to do with them. Because they also don't do anything, by the way. I don't think they provide any stat boosts, and they don't have any attributes.
Yeah, there's the clock room also. There's before you even can get the silver and gold rings, you need to get whatever power up was in the Colosseum. I actually forget, but it's to get into the Colosseum, you have to be in the clock room as it's like as the upper door opens, and the upper door opens and closes every minute, and every minute based on your gameplay clock. So the only hint that this happens is you have to be there when it happens.
Yeah, if you just are standing in the clock room. Like, I think it's a really, really cool idea. But again, it's the most, boy, I hope you had a guide open to tell you that this was going to happen. Or just accidentally wandered in when it was happening.
And I'm going to take that opportunity to sort of pull it back a little bit and cover the basics of this game a little bit, because it is considered one of the progenitors of the Metroidvania genre. Metroidvania, obviously, is half named after Metroid, half named after Castlevania. And this was the first Castlevania game to be directed by Koji Igarashi.
Yes, this was he's listed as special thanks in Rondo of Blood, and I don't know why, because he wasn't involved with the franchise at all before then. His only other writing and programming work before this was on the dating sim Tokimeki Memorial.
Which, like, okay.
Definitely, I believe Tokimeki Memorial is one of those, like, it's another one of those games that, like, sort of wrote the book on how to make a good dating sim. I wouldn't know. That's not really a genre I touch very often.
So it's kind of a weird career path. But this started the sub-series of Castlevania that would go on to be known as Igavania. And the Castlevania would try to make a couple like traditional games in the 3D style on Nintendo 64, and they were not good.
One day I'm going to play them. I want to play one to see.
If you insist. But the Igavania sub-series continued on handhelds, where it was generally very well received. And nowadays it sort of like spiritually continues with Bloodstained, which is the not Konami version of Castlevania that Iga is working on right now, which has 3 games in that series. And Bloodstained, of course, very good. I enjoyed the Metroidvania style of Curse of the Moon, not Curse of the Moon, of Ritual of the Night, and I've heard Curse of the Moon and Curse of the Moon 2 are very good throwbacks to the classic style Castlevania as well. I do not enjoy Symphony of the Night quite as much. I feel that Symphony of the Night, it suffers a lot from the Metroidvania genre having not been codified at the time. So, like, I feel like exploration is really not fun because it still has Castlevania style enemies that take a lot of, like, it fills every room with enemies and you have to just tear through them over and over and over again as you're backtracking every single time. And like some rooms are nothing but long hallways with like enemies as tall as the screen that you need to just sit there and take care of every single time you want to go through it. And it's just such a chore. And the game gives so little direction as to where you're supposed to go. It's kind of open-ended in a way, but also like you can hit walls really quick. And you can go a very long time without any real progression. Like the first time that I played this game after we played Rondo of Blood, I played for about an hour and then just decided I didn't want to keep going because I hadn't made any progress. And it leads to you feeling, it leads to you playing for a very long amount of time without really feeling that you've gotten anything done. And that drags the game down a lot for me. And it wasn't until I finally fell back on looking at a map of the castle that I started to kind of get into the groove of the game. And like once I started to have more of the power-ups, like moving around and fighting as Alucard started to be fun, but it was really only that middle section of the game where I was starting to get it that I was really enjoying it. And I feel like most of the problems with Symphony of the Night, I feel like they're such a big problem because they were problems that I didn't feel were in Super Metroid. So it's like, yes, this is a very early example of Metroidvania, but also, there was an example before this that did all of these things better.
So I can point to something that might sort of explain why progression feels so slow in this game, because it's my major problem with Symphony of the Night. So this game has RPG elements built in, which is something that Metroid did not have.
And they are largely useless, I would say.
So there are level ups. You have equipment that you can put on and take off that include... You have equipment that you can put on and take off. You have weapons you can unequip and equip and all that stuff. And the central idea behind putting those in, according to Igarashi, was that they wanted to make it so that... And I appreciate this. They wanted to make it so that if you hit a boss and it was just a fucking wall of difficulty and there was nothing you could do, you could not get past this boss, you could go grind for a bit and then you'd be stronger, find a stronger weapon, then you can maybe go try the boss again. And I appreciate that, but here's the problem with that in terms of a Metroidvania. And I don't know if any of the future Igavania games improved on this. I've never played any of them. This is the first time I've played any of them. In Super Metroid, when you find a power-up, it is always either something sort of benign. It gives you, more health or more ammo, which is, that's the health and, like, heart upgrades in Symphony of the Night. There's a direct parallel there. But otherwise, you are always finding an ability that is going to help you in traversal through the map. But in Symphony of the Night, most of the time when you find something, it's just, here's a sword, here's some armor. Is it better than what you already have? Statistically,
usually
probably not. I rarely found something that was better than what I already had. And the problem is, that's almost all that you find ever.
And it's not even sometimes you'll find an upgrade to your health and your hearts, but it's not nearly as much as it should be. And it's like in Super Metroid and most Metroidvania games, yeah, like that extra missile tank isn't going to make or break anything, but you are still more powerful now. And it's just, you don't get that feeling from so much of Symphony of the Night. Like, there were entire bosses that I fought that, like, it would be a tough fight, I would kill it, and I would go into the next room. Next room's a dead end with a sword with half the power of the one that I had.
Yeah. And it's just, I think that problem mainly comes from the fact that there are 2 traversal-based abilities in this whole game, I think. That's off the top of my head, the only 2 I can think of that are 100% necessary for traversal are Mist and Bat. And that's it.
Wolf kind of helps if you know how to use it, but it's also not needed for anything.
And I think that shows the biggest flaw with Symphony of the Night is it's a game based on exploration where none of what you do actually help further that exploration. It's where Super Metroid is, oh shit, I got this ability. I can go do this thing that I found earlier. Super Symphony of the Night is more, well, I guess I will rub my face against every wall in the game until I have found what I need to find, and then probably hit a dead end or find a sword.
Symphony of the Night feels to me like a Zack Snyder movie. And that's a weird comparison, but let me walk you through it here. There's a video from a YouTuber named NerdWriter1 where he goes over the fundamental flaw with Batman versus Superman. And in this video, he describes the directing style of Zack Snyder, where he doesn't really write scenes. He writes moments, and then everything else is just excuses to get to the next moment. Whereas generally for filmmaking and screenwriting, you want to have every scene be important. Every scene builds to something, has its significance in the narrative, and also has techniques to make the audience, feel the emotion that you want them to feel, pick up on the information that you want them to feel, and so on. But in the works of Zack Snyder, he really just has these big moments in his movie, and those moments are good. But the rest of the movie is just a slog because it's not doing anything particularly special or interesting. It's just an obligation to get to the next moment. And Symphony of the Night feels like that to me. It has these big moments that are very good, but the connecting tissue between them is just a slog because it's just, well, I've got to do this to get to the next part.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It does have some cool moments, though. I do want to say, I guess I should point out, I think I liked this game a little bit more than you did, but it's just a lot of the problems that I had, it seemed like you shared for the most part. It doesn't seem like we were in all that much disagreement on much of the game. In general,
I would overall say that I don't really recommend playing Symphony of the Night. I don't really see the point. Especially if, from what I've heard, later Igavania games improve on it. To the point that, kind of everyone says, those are the ones that really gave Iga his great reputation. And this one was just, it was special because it was, the first game like this that PlayStation players got, and it was very graphically impressive, and it's just very nostalgic to them.
It was also the only one that was on a console.
Yeah, that too.
Which helps. That I don't understand why, but it feels like Konami just sort of said, "All right, you can keep making it," but they live on the Game Boy Advance and the DS, and that's where they get to happen.
It's a weird dichotomy in the in the gaming industry where it's handhelds don't have prestige, but they make more money. So it's weird. It's much cheaper to make a game for a handheld, and handhelds tend to have a higher install base. So there is much more profit to be had in a successful handheld game. But generally, people don't see handheld games as being as special as console games are because they're unlimited hardware. You can't make them as big and flashy. So it's this weird spot where Castlevania they were going with the route that was more profitable and led them to make more games in this franchise. And the trade-off was, in general, these games had no real cultural impact.
Yeah, I could see that. Also, handhelds just in general, I don't think they're as successful here as they are in Japan. In Japan, handhelds are crazy popular. The Vita And the PSP had a good time in Japan, unlike here, where we didn't get any of the games, to be fair. But, like, Japan loves handhelds. So, there's probably something to that as well. But, yeah, in general, I think Symphony of the Night is a fine game. But it's another one of those games where people on social media like to be like, Symphony of the Night hasn't aged a day. Hasn't aged a day. It's still just as good as it was in 1997, and the fuck it is.
It has totally aged. It has aged several days.
Like, Symphony of the Night is like, it's really weird to point to it and then point to Super Metroid, because I really don't feel like Super Metroid has aged all that much. I think that game is actually still, like, very, very good.
The only thing that I don't like about Super Metroid nowadays is that later Metroids would make the missile button a hold instead of a toggle. I like that better. I would much rather use that for a Metroid game, and that's like literally the only thing that I don't think aged well about Super Metroid. I think it is otherwise still exactly as good as it was when it first released. And that is just not true of Symphony of the Night.
And that makes me wonder, how much of this was a console war thing? How much of this was Sony fanboys saying like, well, Symphony of the Night's just as good as Super Metroid? I'm sure in 97 it was, to be perfectly fair. To be fair, in 97... the comparison between the two games was probably a lot easier, but it has been over 20 years since this game came out. And I've played better Metroidvanias. Like, we talked a lot during our Super Metroid streams, I feel like, because we were both playing a lot of Hollow Knight at the time. And, like, Hollow Knight is an example of, I learned all of the lessons. Here are all of the lessons that can be learned from the past entries in this genre. And Hollow Knight is, like, very close to being a perfect game. I don't think it's possible to be a perfect game, which I think is the main reason why it's not. But it's just, I don't know. I think Symphony, given the benefit of the doubt, obviously, is a fine game. And was probably a mind-blowing game in the year of our Lord 1997. But in the year of our Lord 2020, it just leaves a lot to be desired now.
And I would say that I would not chalk this up to, like, Iga somehow being less talented than his reputation is.
Oh, yeah, no.
Because Bloodstained, I would say, is very good.
The fact that he made this game out of nothing, like... I think that he was on the right track, and obviously, from what I've heard about other Igavania games, he absolutely was on the right track. You just said Bloodstained. I hear great things about Bloodstained.
Bloodstained actually directly addresses one of the biggest problems that we had with this game, where we feel like you're not progressing at all very quickly. Bloodstained makes that the core mechanic, where it's sort of a little Kirby and Mega Man like, where you get skills from your enemies. The main character of Bloodstained is what's called a shard binder, where every enemy that you kill has a chance of dropping a shard, which you can absorb to gain new powers. So literally every single enemy type in the entire game has the chance to drop a new ability for you. And most of them are very small abilities, except for that one ability that you need to go underwater, which for some reason is a big required upgrade that is randomly dropped by a single enemy type. But otherwise, like, in between the big upgrades, like double jumping and like dashing and all that stuff, you're getting these small upgrades constantly. So even when you're still struggling to progress and find the way forward, and you haven't gotten something big in a while, you're still constantly getting better. And that helps a lot.
Yeah, I could imagine that would add a lot to the whole feeling of not progressing.
Yeah, and it's weird for me having played Bloodstained before Symphony of the Night, because Symphony of the Night is just it just kind of feels like a worse Bloodstained to me, but it's actually the opposite. Bloodstained is a better Symphony of the Night.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I feel like some people listening might be kind of mad that we're like, this classic video game, it's not as good as you remember. I really don't think it's great anymore. It's not timeless. I'll give it that. It ain't timeless. I still enjoyed my time, but I'm also, you mentioned while you were talking about your experience of like, you didn't start enjoying it until you finally broke down and like looked up a map and started actually progressing. That's literally exactly how it went for me. I for a while was just going and like, when am I going to hit something that feels like I'm moving forward? And then it just didn't happen. So I looked up a map and suddenly I was enjoying the game a lot more. And I think I think the fact that I felt I needed to look up a map in order to feel like I was accomplishing anything in Symphony when that was never really an issue in Metroid is a testament to the game.
Yeah. It's rough to go back to. And I don't want to like diminish anything it may have accomplished back in the day, but I wasn't there for that. So playing it for the first time now, it's rough. And I feel like the RPG elements were all very tacked on and they hurt the game more than they helped it, because the way that you said, like, it's a solution to a boss that you can't beat, but it's also a hurdle that makes bosses that you otherwise would be skilled enough to beat take twice as long as they need to if you're not grinding.
Mm-hmm. And also just like grinding is really slow in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Enemies very quickly start to give you like 1 EXP.
Yeah, and they also start to hit really hard really quick.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, we can talk about the soundtrack, which is done by one Michiru Yamane, who is super talented. I don't think this is my favorite soundtrack of hers. I think this soundtrack is good, but I struggle to think about a lot of the pieces off the top of my head. What I most know Michiru Yamane for is Skullgirls, which rest in peace that game. But she did a very, very good soundtrack for that game. Like chef's kiss good.
Yeah, I would say I don't think this is a bad soundtrack, but I can't really pull very many songs out of it off the top of my head.
I could pull a couple, though. For instance, I really, really like Marble Gallery.
Yeah, I would say that is the song that sticks with me the most. Probably even more than, like, the sort of default song for Dracula's Castle. Like, Marble Gallery, I think, was the best, just, like, regular platforming song.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely my favorite song on the soundtrack, I think. And I kind of wish... I don't think it's in Smash. I kind of wish it was... But, what can you do?
Mm-hmm.
It's just got a nice movement feeling to it. It's the dun 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 dun, like really, really, it feels good to move along to. I don't know.
I would say the one song that I felt was my favorite was Lost Painting. This is the song that, like, when we found out that it was going to make it into Smash Brothers, we were like, well, how does that fit in? And like they did this weird trance remix of it,
which I believe is by Yamane.
No, it is by Tetsuya Shibata.
Ah, damn.
But it's a song that feels like kind of a different tone from the rest of the soundtrack. It's much more relaxed and ambient, and I like it a lot. This feels more like the tone that I like to look for in Metroidvania games, which is about the atmosphere more than the action. Although I do feel like most of the soundtrack fits the action idea of Castlevania very well, this is one of the songs that just kind of works for me a bit better.
I would agree with that. It's very slow, but it fits the part that it's in at the very least. I don't know. I like Wandering Ghosts a lot. I don't think I remember where it plays. Maybe it plays like... It doesn't play down in the caves, I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Is this a boss theme?
No, I don't think so. It's just...
Maybe YouTube comments can tell us where it plays.
Oh, it's the Coliseum.
Oh, this is the Coliseum.
Yeah. So it plays in the Coliseum, apparently. Which is... like, an interesting spot, I guess.
This is a very funky song.
Every time I think of the Coliseum, I just think of that part where he walks in and Richter's sitting in the throne just like, yes, fight him! And Alucard's like, what the fuck is it? That's a film? What? Hold on, wait, what's happening? Which is very good. But those are really, I think Rainbow Cemetery is very good. But it also is weird. Like, this shouldn't be a Castlevania game.
When does this play?
I think this might play... Is this playing the Bell Tower, maybe? I don't know. But yeah, that's really it. I don't have a lot that I can... If you really want to hear a deep dive on this game's soundtrack, Peter actually brought it to Original Sound Chat like a year ago. I think he brought it for the release of Bloodstained. So you should definitely go check that out if you want a real good sort of deep dive into the soundtrack of Symphony of the Night. Because it is considered a classic, though I think that like Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 and Rondo, just to name 4, have much more memorable soundtracks overall. And again, this is not to say anything about Yamane. I love her work. She's super good. But it's just how it shakes out, I guess.
Yeah, like I said, the soundtrack it's fine.
And I think that about wraps up our talk of the soundtrack. I don't think there's anything else that really needs to be said. I mean, it's good, but I think other Castlevania soundtracks are better.
It's like I said, I don't think it's a bad soundtrack. It's just I don't find it very memorable. I can't pull out any particular tracks from it.
I guess Dracula's Castle. I forgot about that one. We should highlight that one. That one's important.
That's true. I do like that one.
But yeah, Dracula's Castle is the music that plays in like the first area of Dracula's Castle. It's good. It feels very classic Castlevania.
Yeah, and it's a good intro song. It's got that driving melody that's like moving.
So that's at least one good one to point out, I guess. But I don't really have anything else. So I guess that means we're gonna wrap up the episode, right?
Oh, it's all over. This is the end of the whole show, right?
Finally done. Now play the whole episode again in reverse. So the inverted castle is a neat idea, I think. It's a cool twist, and I like that the bosses in the inverted castle are all new versions of the original Castlevania bosses, which between this and Rondo, boy, they really like to just recreate those exact bosses.
Yeah, that idea's starting to wear a little thin.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick of fighting the mummy. I don't want to fight the mummy anymore. I don't want to fight Frankenstein's monster anymore. Sorry, the creature. I don't want to fight the creature anymore.
So, like, I get it. People generally think very highly of the inverted castle when they played this game as a kid. And it's like, oh, it turns out there's so much more to this game than we thought. But I feel like there isn't really. Because I don't feel like the inverted castle really adds anything. And it's kind of clear that it was slapped on at the end because of how little thought was put into the way that you move around on the ceilings. It's very slow and frustrating to do it, and you're like constantly going in and out of bat form to do it. And it's just, I didn't enjoy the inverted castle at all. I feel like it was the game really outstaying its welcome. And like you said, even the bosses are just reused bosses.
They are redone though, at least. Like they are entirely different from they've been in the past. Though I think Rondo did a better job remixing those fights.
I would agree with that. They brought back an enemy from Kid Dracula to be the bonus boss of Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, that's weird. That's super weird.
And the reward for fighting him is not very good.
Isn't it the poison gas ability?
No, it's a ring that lets you absorb fire.
Oh, nice. I think there's also a mist ability back there, but I could be wrong. When I was looking at the map, because that was the one relic I didn't get. Because I was like, this ain't fucking worth it. And then I just left and beat the game.
I don't know, maybe there is. I don't know. That fight is like super easy to cheese, though.
Yeah, I figured out the way to cheese it.
You got to get the circlet that absorbs lightning attacks. Because then every time he uses his lightning attack, he'll just fully heal you.
Yeah, I think you explained that to me. It sure was, I suppose.
But yeah, I don't like the inverted castle very much. I just feel like it's padding. And it's frustrating that like you don't have the map anymore. You need to literally the map screen. You need to fill it out all over again, and you can't really reference where things are. It's just, I don't like it at all. And then there's enemies that hit for like 50 damage in there. It's too much.
I think it was probably a lot more impressive in 97 when kids were playing and going, whoa! There's a whole other map! Sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it just sort of doesn't make any sense. Why is there an upside down version of the castle in the sky? That doesn't make any fucking sense. But whatever.
Yeah, what's the lore there?
As I don't know. I have no idea. It's just there, I guess. And you mentioned when you were like playing that the inverted castle it feels like something that was added late into development because the castle as a whole is not designed to be flipped upside down and still be movable.
Yeah.
Like still be traversable.
I just didn't like it. It's like do the same game all over again, but slightly worse now.
I think it's a neat idea, but I think that's about where it ends in my good things to say about it.
And there's no shopkeeper in the inverted castle. You have to go all the way back to the regular castle.
Yep. As I learned when I needed to go buy potions for the final boss and then use the library card, which I didn't realize what the library card did until that moment. I used the library card one time.
I still don't know what it does.
It teleports you to the shop.
What?
It teleports you to the shop.
Excuse me?
It teleports you to the shop.
It does.
Yeah.
It never tells you that.
It sure doesn't ever tell you that, does it? I didn't realize it until I used it.
What do meal tickets do?
That a meal ticket, I believe, summons a random piece of food.
Okay.
Neither of these items have this written in their item description, because why would they? That would require you to give any information to the player whatsoever. But yeah, the library card, I just kept getting them and was like, maybe I'll use them for something. I don't fucking know. Because the description is just like a card for the library. And it's like, cool, great. And then I realized near the end of the game, wait, the shop's in the library. Surely this doesn't. And then I used it and I was in the shop and was like, oh, cool, great. Wish I knew about this 15 hours ago. It was one of those. But yeah, that's that. What familiar did you rock once you finally unlocked a familiar?
Mostly the fairy, just because you told me it was really good and I didn't care to experiment.
The fairy I used because it works like a fairy in like Zelda, where if you have potions in your inventory, just automatically she'll use it. And she'll also point out where there are secret breakable walls. And apparently she'll also sing on your shoulder, but I never got that to work. So, the sword, I'm told, is supposed to be very good. It is a very good offensive one.
Mm-hmm.
I never really used any of the others. It was mainly the fairy because she's cute and I like her and she healed me, and I value things that will heal me when I am dying.
Once I got the sword that you can throw, I didn't really need any other help with offense.
But yeah, so that's, I guess, to wrap it up. I did find out Michiru Yamane did in fact do 2 remixes for Smash, just none of them were Castlevania related.
Ah, okay.
She appears to have done 2 remixes in 3DS and Wii U specifically. One is the Fight 1 theme from Fire Emblem Gaiden, and the other is the remix of Saria's song and the mid-boss battle. So yeah, those are the 2 that she did. Neither of them were Castlevania, unfortunately, and she doesn't appear to have done anything for Ultimate specifically, but that's where she is. And that's all I got for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I think that's a pretty good length bonus episode. Obviously, Majora's Mask will hopefully come out in a couple weeks.
Soon, TM.
Yeah, and then we'll probably need one between Banjo or Majora and Banjo, but we'll see. We'll have to see on that one. And then I don't think we're going to need a bonus episode for a little while. They're all pretty quick plays after that until we hit I want to say Wind Waker. No, until we hit Sunshine, I would say.
Depends.
I guess that does depend. It'll be my first time going through Sunshine. For sure, probably Wind Waker.
That's true. I'm probably... I was about to say, I got through Sunshine real quick on 3D All-Stars, but I've also played it before, so...
Yeah, I've never played Sunshine before, so we'll have to see how that works out. But yeah, I can't think of anything else. So with that, you can follow me on Twitter at @TheDeboggy. You can follow Matt at Grimace2Menace. You can follow our usual editor, Peter, at Pete Speakeasy. He does cool things. And you can find us at anondino.squarespace.com, which is where you can also find my other show, Original Sound Chat, that I do with Peter, where, like I said, we actually have an episode that is half about Symphony of the Night. So if you want to go learn more about how the game was made, and also some information on Yamane-san and also the soundtrack itself, then that is where you should go, because we have that. It's there. We are both streaming on Twitch sometimes at twitch.tv/Nintendo World Report. Smashterpieces streams every Thursday, and then the other person is just when they have the day to stream. It's not really, the other person's not really set. But one of us will always be streaming on Thursday on the channel. And that really ought to be it. If you can, by the way, if you're listening to this and you haven't gone and done a few things, being thrown us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, if you listen there, and even if you don't, honestly, if you could subscribe to us on Spotify, it's completely free. All you need is a Spotify account. Even if you don't listen there, having a follower count there actually does help a lot of things. It helps make sure that these services... It helps make these services think that maybe it would be kind of cool if they put the show in front of new eyes, basically. So if you could help us out with that, that would be great.
We call that the algorithm.
Yeah, we call that helping us work with the algorithm, because it's a cruel, unfeeling matriarch. And with that, my name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And we will see you next time for our next bonus episode, but actually in this case for Majora's Mask. Three, two, one, clap.
3, 2, 1, clap.
The cat freaked out when I clapped. He thought I was clapping at him. I was not. You're doing nothing wrong. At the moment, give it 2 seconds. He's sniffing around and being mischievous.